I've always been a skeptic when it comes to medicine, or at least I used to be. I never thought I'd find myself in this position. Desperate, clinging to hope like a drowning person to a raft. The pain started years ago, subtle at first, just a dull ache. It spread, slowly taking over my body. Doctors had no answers. Specialist after specialist, test after test, and all they could tell me was, "We don't know." Some suggested it might be psychosomatic, but I knew better. I could feel it crawling under my skin, gnawing at my nerves, suffocating me from the inside out. Every pill, every treatment, nothing worked. I watched as my life crumbled, piece by piece. Work became impossible, socializing even more so. My friends drifted away, unsure of what to say, or maybe just scared of the sickness I carried with me. The worst part wasn't the pain itself. It was the uncertainty, the never knowing if there was an end in sight. It was on one of those sleepless nights, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when I decided I couldn't take it anymore. Something had to give. A faint recollection of a conversation resurfaced, one I had brushed off as ridiculous at the time. A friend, a fringe type, someone who dabbled in things better left alone, had once mentioned the dark web, the part of the internet where all the forbidden things lived. I had laughed it off back then, but now, it didn't seem so ridiculous. Out of sheer desperation, I started digging. It wasn't easy, and the more I read about the dark web, the more I realized how deep the rabbit hole went. It wasn't just a place for illegal goods. It was a world where people sold things you couldn't find anywhere else, things that shouldn't exist. My fingers trembled as I typed in search after search, each one more bizarre than the last. After hours of searching, I found something. A thread buried deep within a forum, half English, half some language I couldn't even begin to decipher. But the gist was clear. Someone was selling exactly what I needed. The title of the post was simple, almost mocking in its simplicity: Rare Remedies for Rare Ailments. My heart skipped a beat as I clicked the link, taking me to a storefront that looked more like something out of a nightmare. Black background, neon green text flashing with distorted symbols I didn't understand. The vendor's description of the medicine was unsettlingly precise. It claimed to treat ailments that no traditional doctor could diagnose, no conventional treatment could touch. The symptoms listed matched mine perfectly, right down to the crawling sensation in my bones. I hesitated, my mind racing with doubt. This couldn't be real, right? But then again, nothing else had worked. What did I have to lose? My cursor hovered over the Buy Now button. I could almost hear the voices of all the doctors who had failed me, telling me I was wasting my time. But what if this was my only chance? What if this was the relief I'd been chasing for years? Taking a deep breath, I clicked the button, sealing a decision I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to take back. Clicking Buy Now was the easiest part. What came after? That's when the dread really began to set in. The screen flickered for a moment, like it wasn't sure if it wanted to take my money or not. The website itself felt wrong, not just in the way that it was part of the dark web, but in how it behaved. The layout glitched. Symbols I couldn't make sense of flashed and disappeared. At first, I thought my computer was bugging out, but then the unsettling realization hit me. This was intentional. I wasn't just navigating some shady corner of the internet. This place had been designed to be unnerving. Every click felt like it was pulling me deeper into something I shouldn't be a part of. My mouse froze at random intervals, only to lurch forward a second later. The text on the screen, neon green on black, looked like it was alive, shimmering, almost as if it was trying to jump off the monitor. There were strange messages popping up every now and then, too fast for me to read, but I caught enough words to know they weren't normal. Fear, sacrifice, relinquish, each one more disturbing than the last. But I pushed on. I come too far to stop now. My stomach twisted with every confirmation step. Inputting my information, selecting the delivery method, waiting for the final screen to load. When it did, I half expected some grotesque image to flash across the screen as if the whole site were some elaborate joke meant to terrify people like me. But there was no jump scare. Just a single, blinking message. Your purchase is confirmed. Expect delivery soon. No receipt, no email confirmation. Just that. I shut my laptop and sat in the dark for a long time, wondering if I had made a horrible mistake. But it was done, and for better or worse, the medicine was on its way. 2 days later, it arrived. No return address, no label, just a plain, unmarked package sitting on my doorstep like it had materialized there. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside, nestled in crumpled black tissue paper, was a small vial. The liquid inside shimmered, not quite a color I could name, almost like it was shifting from one shade to another. There was something else, too. A folded slip of paper. I unfolded it carefully, my fingers trembling. The instructions were brief, written in the same cryptic, glitchy font as the website had been. They didn't offer much comfort. Do not take under the full moon. Do not take if you hear them. Do not take after midnight. That was it. No explanation, no further details. Just those vague warnings that made my skin crawl. Who are they? I thought, my pulse quickening. And why after midnight? I stared at the vial, my mind racing with doubt. The liquid inside swirled as though it had a life of its own, almost as if it was moving. I told myself it was just my imagination, that I was letting the creepiness of the whole situation get to me. But still, there was something off about it. The way the vial felt in my hand, the faint hum I thought I could hear if I held it close enough to my ear. I should have thrown it away. I should have walked right back inside and tossed it in the trash. But I didn't. I was too far gone now. The pain that had taken over my life whispered in the back of my mind, reminding me of why I'd done this in the first place. So, despite every warning, every instinct screaming at me to stop, I tucked the vial away in my pocket and went inside, wondering what I had really signed up for. I waited 3 days before I finally took the first dose. 3 days of staring at that vial, wrestling with the warnings scrawled on that slip of paper, and trying to convince myself that I wasn't completely insane for even considering it. But the pain, God, the pain. It was relentless, crawling through my body like some twisted parasite, gnawing at me until I couldn't think of anything else. On the third night, I couldn't take it anymore. Midnight had come and gone. I was alone, the house quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floorboards. My mind was running in circles, desperate for any kind of relief. I grabbed the vial from the drawer and twisted off the cap, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The liquid inside swirled as I poured a small dose into the cap. I hesitated for only a second before I downed it in one quick gulp. It tasted metallic, cold, and left a strange tingling sensation in my mouth, as if my tongue had gone numb. For a moment, nothing happened. I sat there in the silence, waiting, my heart pounding in my chest. And then, slowly, I felt it. A change, subtle at first, but undeniable. It wasn't relief. It was something else. The pain didn't fade. Instead, it shifted, like it was no longer coming from inside me but from the room itself. The air grew heavier, almost oppressive. My skin prickled with an odd sensation, like the space around me was alive. The shadows in the corners of the room deepened, as if they were watching me. My eyes darted around, trying to find the source of the feeling, but there was nothing, just an overwhelming sense of being observed. I tried to shake it off, chalk it up to paranoia, but then the whispers started. At first, they were faint, so quiet I thought they were just the wind outside, or maybe the groaning of the house settling. But the longer I sat there, the clearer they became. Voices whispering things I couldn't understand. They were too low, too distorted, like they were coming from far away but growing closer with every second. I stood up, my breath quickening, and stumbled toward the bathroom. I needed to splash water on my face, do something to shake this off. But when I looked in the mirror, my blood ran cold. My reflection didn't move. I stared at myself, frozen in disbelief. I lifted my hand to my face, but the reflection lagged behind, delayed by just a fraction of a second. It wasn't a glitch in the glass, it was me. My reflection wasn't following my movements in real time, like it was watching me, studying me. I backed away from the mirror, heart pounding, the whispers growing louder now. They filled the air around me, a chorus of low, unsettling voices that seemed to be coming from every corner of the room. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but I knew one thing for sure. They weren't friendly. I stumbled back into the hallway, feeling the weight of unseen eyes on me. The shadows seemed to ripple, like something was moving through them, shifting just out of sight. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone standing there. But the hallway was empty, or at least it looked empty. But I wasn't alone. I could feel it. Something was there, watching me, hiding in the edges of my vision. Every time I turned my head, it slipped out of view, staying just out of reach. My skin crawled with the sensation of being observed, like 1,000 invisible eyes were fixated on me, waiting. I didn't know what the medicine had done to me, but I knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. I don't know when the line between reality and nightmare blurred, but I can feel it slipping further away with every passing hour. At first, the hallucinations came in waves, brief and fragmented. I'd see something out of the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement, a shape that shouldn't be there, but when I'd turn, it would be gone. Simple tricks of the mind, I told myself. Side effects of the medicine. But that lie didn't last long. The whispers that had once haunted me from the shadows grew louder, more insistent. Sometimes they coaxed me, soft and reassuring, telling me I was on the right path, that I needed to keep taking the medicine. "You're almost there," they would say, their voices wrapping around me like a cold embrace. But then there were the others, harsher, more frantic. They screamed at me to stop, to throw the vial away before it consumed me. "It's changing you," they'd howl, their voices full of desperation. "You won't be you anymore." I didn't know which voices to believe. They all sounded real. But as the days dragged on, the hallucinations intensified, warping the world around me into something grotesque and unfamiliar. Shadows crawled up the walls like living creatures, twisting and undulating, leaving dark stains where they touched. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting as though the house was alive, watching me with malevolent intent. Every object in my home felt wrong, distorted, off-kilter, like I was seeing the world through a broken lens. And then there was my body. First, it was just a feeling, a slight tingling under my skin, almost like my nerves were waking up for the first time in years. But soon that feeling grew into something far worse. It started at night, lying in bed, unable to sleep. I could feel it beneath my skin, something moving. It slithered, slow and deliberate, like tiny insects crawling just under the surface. I'd scratch and claw at my arms, trying to make it stop, but it never did. Every time I looked at my skin, I swore I could see something shift, just a ripple, a flicker of movement. But no matter how hard I stared, the change always slipped away before I could fully grasp it. And my eyes, God, my eyes. One night, I caught a glimpse of them in the mirror and nearly screamed. My pupils were different, slit, elongated like a predator's. They pulsed, expanding and contracting unnaturally, as if they were adjusting to some new, incomprehensible light that only I could see. When I blinked, the image stayed burned into my mind, as though I was seeing something that didn't belong to this world, something I was never meant to witness. The hallucinations merged with reality in ways I couldn't separate anymore. I would wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I wasn't alone. My bedroom would be filled with figures, dark, twisted shapes looming over me, watching, whispering. They'd crowd around my bed, their faces warped and melted, eyes black as voids. But the worst part was that I knew them. Somewhere, in the back of my mind, I recognized these distorted figures, as if they'd once been part of my life, but had been consumed by something far darker. During the brief moments of clarity, I tried to make sense of it all. I tell myself it was just the medicine, just some strange side effect that would eventually wear off. But even those moments of logic began to crumble. I could feel myself changing. Not just my body, but something deeper, more essential. The whispers in my head returned, more persistent than ever, telling me that the medicine wasn't healing me. it was transforming me. I wasn't just becoming healthier. I was becoming something else. Something not human. I looked down at my arms and saw my skin shimmer in the dim light, like a thin membrane stretched too tightly over something that wasn't mine. My bones felt foreign, heavy, like they didn't belong in my body anymore. I could feel the shift deep in my core, an unraveling of everything that once made me me. In moments of panic, I'd try to stop. I'd throw the vial into the trash, swear to myself that I wouldn't take another dose. But the pull was too strong. The pain would return, worse than before, gnawing at me until I couldn't resist. The whispers, those sweet, seductive voices, would creep back into my mind, telling me that the transformation was nearly complete, that I just had to take a little more. I was terrified of what I was becoming, but even more terrified of what would happen if I stopped. Because deep down, I knew there was no turning back. The medicine had already done its work. I wasn't human anymore, at least not entirely. By the time I realized what was happening, it was already too late. The changes were too far along, too deeply rooted. My body wasn't mine anymore. Something else had taken hold, something I couldn't understand. And the worst part was I had invited it in. In a desperate haze, I turned to the only place I could think of for answers. The cellar. I had to know who or what had sold me this cursed medicine. I needed to find the source, figure out if there was any way to reverse the damage before I completely lost myself. I logged back onto the dark web, my fingers trembling as I typed in the URL. But when the page loaded, my heart sank. The site was gone. No glitchy interface, no ominous symbols. Just an error message that left me staring at the screen in disbelief. I refreshed the page over and over, convinced there had to be some mistake. But the result was always the same. It was like the site had never existed. Panic set in. I tried searching for the vendor's name, for any trace of the mysterious figure who had sold me the medicine. But every search led to nothing. It was a dead end, like they had vanished into thin air, like they had never been real. I wasn't ready to accept that. Couldn't. I spent hours scouring every forum, every hidden corner of the web, desperate for some lead. And finally, I found something. Buried in a forgotten thread, deep in an obscure forum, I found a post from someone else. Someone who had bought the same medicine. Their description of the symptoms sent a cold shiver down my spine. Everything matched. The heightened senses, the shifting shadows, the strange changes to their body. But what they had experienced was far worse. They talked about visions of other worlds, bleeding into our reality. They described things watching them, waiting for the right moment to step through. It was like reading my own future. The more I dug, the more I found. I wasn't the only one. There were others, people scattered across the globe, each with similar stories. Each of them had bought from the same vendor, and each of them had vanished without a trace. I could feel my heart racing as I pieced it all together. The medicine wasn't meant to cure us. It wasn't even meant to help. It was something else entirely, something worse. The whispers in my head grew louder, more frantic now. They weren't just voices anymore. They were instructions. I could feel them pushing me, urging me to take more of the medicine, to open myself up completely. I didn't know why, but deep down I could sense the truth. The medicine wasn't changing me for the sake of healing. It was opening a door between realities. I had let something in, something ancient, something malevolent, and it was using me, using all of us as a conduit, a way to cross over from wherever it came from into our world. I was a gateway. The whispers spoke of hunger, of power, of worlds beyond comprehension. I could feel its presence now, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for me to finish the transformation, to become something else, something not of this world. I was no longer in control. My thoughts weren't my own. My actions, my very existence were all being manipulated by it. I tried to stop. I smashed the vial, threw away the remnants of the medicine, but it didn't matter. The damage had been done. I could feel it inside me, growing stronger by the day. My reflection barely resembled me anymore. My eyes glowed with an unnatural light, my skin rippling with movements that shouldn't be there. In the end, I realized there was no escaping this, no undoing it. Whatever had crossed over through me, it was here to stay. And it wasn't just me. It was all of us who had taken the medicine. We were part of something bigger, something terrifying. The last thing I found before I gave up searching was a message, buried deep in a form I should never have found. It wasn't from another victim. It was from the vendor. The gate is open. Soon we'll all be free. And with that, I understood. The medicine wasn't for us. It was for them. Whatever they are, whatever I've become, the door is wide open now. And I can feel them coming through.